Hello, my name's Vince, and I'm a student of Mr. Denton at BSM. Today, we're going to go through some REPL speedruns, starting with Unit 5. So Unit 5 is where we look at strings in a much more in-depth manner. And for us, it's important to know what a string is. So a string is actually a collection of characters, or like text. For example, hello world is a string. Now, say that we want to get the first letter H of hello world. Well, how do we do that? And we do that by using what's called the index of the string. Every letter of the string has an index, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And so to get the first letter, which is the index of 0, we put it into square brackets. So we get string and then the character at the 0th index. That will give us H. Say we want to get the first two letters instead, not just the one letter. How do we do that? So we have to do something called slicing a string. And we do this through the square brackets again. We use the notation S, and then we put a colon to indicate that we want to slice the string, not just get one character. So the first thing we put here is the index we want to start at. In this case, 0. And the next thing we put here is the index we want to end at. So this is exclusive. So in this case, we want to put 2. And what this means is it will get the character at the 0th index and the character at the first index in the string and return it to us. In this case, this is equal to HE. Now, what if we want to skip over some letters? Say we want to get the 0th and the second letter. Well, we can also use slicing, except this time we have 2 colons over here. So if we want to start at the first letter, we use 0, and we want to stop at the second letter. So we use 3, and we want to skip, so we only get every 2 letters. So finally we put 2. And this will return to us HL. Now, using these tools, we can manipulate strings to suit what we want to do. So let's go back to the problem. Over here, what do we have? We're given a string, and we need to perform some operations. So the first thing we need to do is get the string as our input. By default, input returns a string, so we don't have to typecast it, and we don't have to change it to an integer or to other data types that we'll meet later. So in the first line, we want to print the third character of the string. Going back here, we see that if we want to get the character at a certain index of the string, we use the square brackets. So we want to print in the first line S brackets 2, because as you can see, because the index starts at 0, the third character in the string actually has an index of 2. Now, what's next? In the second line, we want to print the second to the last character of the string. Now, you might ask, how do we do this? And so the trick is you can get characters from the back of the string by putting in negative numbers. So if this character is 0 and it's the first character, then the last character is equal to -1. And the second to last character is equal to -2, and so on. So we want to get the second to last character of the string, so therefore we should print S -2. Now, in the third line, we want to print the first 5 characters of the string. So as you can see, we can use the slice notation to get a certain substring of the string. Since we want to get the first 5 characters, we will go S 0:5. Now, there's a shortcut here, and it's that we don't need to use the 0, we can put :5. What this means is that Python automatically assumes if we don't put anything here, we need to put a 0. So we can leave it at that. Now, in the fourth line, we want to print all but the last two characters of the string. And we'll use slice notation for this too. So we get S, and then we want to cut off the last two characters of the string. So how do we do that? We need to get the length of the string first. We get the length of the string by using a function called len, which returns the length of the string. So in this case, len s will give us the number of characters in the string. So we can set a variable to this, length is equal to len s. Now we want to print s, and then we want to get everything but the last two characters, so we go length minus 2. Now, in the sixth line, we want to print all the characters of the string. Sorry, in the fifth line, we want to print all the characters of the string with even indices. So we want to use the skip function. We want to skip over every odd index. So since we don't need the start or the end, we can put 2 colons. Remember that this assumes that we just put zeros there. And then in the final, we want to loop over every 2 indexes. So we can put 2. And this will return every 2 numbers, printing all characters with even indices. Now, in the sixth line, we want to print all the characters of the string with odd indices, starting with the second character in the string. So how do we do this? It's the same variation here, where we want to skip every other character, but this time we want to start at the first odd index, which happens to be the second character. So therefore, the first odd index is 1, so we want to start at 1, so we'll put the 1 up here. In the seventh line, we want to print all the characters of the string in reverse order. How do we do this? We can simply make the index -1. This will print all the characters of the string in reverse order. Because if you imagine here, it's like jumping backwards. Instead of stepping forward once each time, or stepping forward twice each time, we're going to step backwards, and that will print all the characters in reverse order. In the eighth line, we want to print every second character of the string in reverse order, starting from the last character. So in this case, our end, we want to make this -2, because we want to start from the last character in the string. And finally, in the ninth line, we print the length of the string. As we already got the length of the string here, we can just print length. Now, this should work. Oh, what's wrong? Let's see what's the problem. So over here, oh, it appears we're missing a line. We haven't printed this string, so I must have missed something here. Yes, sorry, I accidentally cut out where we were printing it by -1. So now it should work. And there we go. That's how you manipulate strings. So let's move on to the next assignment. Okay, so our problem is, given a string consisting of words separated by spaces, determine how many words it has. And to solve the problem, use the method count. What count does is it counts the number of a certain character in the string. For example, if our string is hello world, and we use count, say we want to count the number of L's in the string. If we do this, this will print 2. So if we run their code, over here, it prints 3. I forgot there's another L in world, but that's what it will do. So to solve this problem, we want to determine how many words it has, and we do that by counting the number of spaces in the string. So first, we can input the string, and now we want to count the number of spaces. Spaces is equal to s.count and then a space. So this will count the number of spaces that appears in the string. And finally, we're counting the number of words. And we know that, say, in our hello world, there's 1 space, but there are two words since the first word doesn't have a space before it. So we want to print spaces plus 1. And this should do the trick. Okay, let's move on to the next assignment. Okay, welcome back. So, our next assignment is given a string, cut it into 2 equal parts. If the length of the string is odd, leave the middle character within the first chunk. So the first string contains 1 more character than the second. Now, print a new string on a single row of the first and second half swap. Second half first, and first half last. So we'll do this problem using if statements first, and then I'll explain after how to use it without using if statements. First, let's input a string. Now, we want to check if the length of the string is odd. So if len s, the modulus 2, which gets the remainder when we divide it by 2, is equal to 0, this means it's even, then we can swap the first and the last half. So let's call a variable first half is equal to s, and we want to store the length of the string first, so we can refer to it later. So length is equal to len s, and then we can change this here to length. So to get the first half of the string, we want to slice the string, so we get everything, and then we end at the length divided by 2. Since the length is divisible by 2, this should give us an integer, so it won't be a problem. If instead we try to put a decimal here, then the code would error out. So we need to always make sure whatever we're putting into this slice function is always an integer. Now, we need to do the second half of the string is equal to s, length divided by 2 to the end. So we can leave that as that. Now, what if the string isn't divisible by 2? So we do the first half, and it says here that the first string should contain 1 more character than the second if it's odd. So we have s, and we know length isn't divisible by 2, so we want to do length plus 1 divisible by 2. So, and this will return the first half of the string plus the 1 extra character. Now, we do the second half. It's equal to s, and then we go from length plus 1 divided by 2 to the end. Then, we should be able to print the second half of the string plus the first half of the string. And we can add strings, which just means they join together. So this should work. Oh, what's wrong? As I said, the slice indices should be in integers. This means that we're trying to put a decimal as a slice index. Let's look at the problem. The length of the string, modulo 2, is equal to 1. So we want to put length plus 1, which gives us an even number. I may have to put the keywords integer here. And so this will ensure that our string is an integer. Right, so that's correct. So in this case, we need to ensure that the indexes are integers before putting them into this function. And in this case, it should work. Now, the question is, how would we do this without using these if statements, like the problem suggested? So, the trick is to use integer division. So, the secret is the first half of the string should be until we have integer of length, and we can use integer division of length divided by 2. So what this will give us, length plus 1 divided by 2. So imagine that our string hello world, how many characters do we have? 5, 10, 12. So to get the middle of the string is 6. So what we're doing here, 12 plus 1, integer division by 2, the length plus is the string is 12, and we add 1, and we divide it using integer division by 2, and this will give us 6, because 13 integer division by 2 means always round down, it will give us 6. But how about if we change this? Let's say we remove the exclamation mark, and the new length is now 5. Sorry, the new length is now 11. But we still want to get until the 6th number or index as our middle number. So this will still work. 11 plus 1, integer division by 2 is 6. And therefore, we can use this method to get the middle index from which we need to split the number from. So the first half is equal to length plus 1, integer division by 2. And the second half is equal to the same thing. And now we can print the second half plus the first half. And we can solve this problem without using if statements. And just like that, we've solved the problem. Now, on to the next one. So, the problem is, given a string consisting of exactly 2 words separated by a space, print a new string with the first and second words swapped, with the second word printed first. So, what we need to do in this case is first we need to find the index of the space in the string. For example, in this hello world string, the index of the space will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll get the index as 6, and then we'll split the string from 7 onwards, and then paste this back. The question is, how do we find the index of the space? And we use something called find. For example, using the string, let's find the index of the space. So the method is called find, and we put in the brackets what we want to find. In this case, is space. We run our code. As you can see, it will print the index of 6. So now let's write some code that helps us find the index of the space in the input strings. First, we say input this string, and then we can say index is equal to s.find space. This gives us where we find the space. Now we can put first word, and now we want to slice the string. So s from the start, which is 0, to this colon until the space, which should be index. And then the second word should be s, and then index plus 1, because the space takes up 1 character, so we need to move 1 character more to get after the space until the end of the string. Then we can print the second word plus the first word, and that should give us the answer. I think we'll end the speed run there. See you all next time.